Testing, testing. We'll be starting the program in 1 minute. If we can have everyone come into the main hall, please. We'll be starting the program in 1 minute. If we can have everyone come into the main hall, please. Thank you. Sisters, if you want to make your way, inshallah, we'll be starting off the program. So, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hope you are doing well. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we are joined by Sheikh Mujahid, who is, of course, no stranger now to the Al-Mahdi community. Tonight's topic will be, is being spiritually content allowed in Islam? Tonight's structure will be as such, where we'll be having a 40-minute speech by Sheikh Mujahid, and then that will be followed by a guided question and answer portion. So we do have a few questions that we would like to go over. And of course, if there are any questions from the audience, we can also take them live near the end. So inshallah, we'll be wrapping, the entire program will wrap up within an hour comfortably, inshallah. So with that being said, let's invite up Sheikh Mujahid with 3 loud salawats ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين قال الله الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So first of all, I would like to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for another opportunity that He's allowed us to gather here and inshallah talk about Islam, learn about Islam, and hopefully take a few steps forward towards Him, inshallah. Secondly, I would also like to request Surah Fatiha for Marhum Asad Jafri, for all the Shuhada of Islam, especially the Marhumin of everyone who's present here. Fatiha. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Okay, so tonight's discussion, we are primarily talking about 2 main subjects. The first topic is the actual title of the program that's been assigned, is being spiritually content allowed in Islam. We're briefly going to go over this idea of contentment, how is it related to complacency, what does being stagnant mean. The question itself, is this even a valid question as far as Islamic teachings are concerned? So that's the first subject. The second subject is, which is more important, is factors that contribute in us becoming spiritually content. What are some of the factors that ulamas and scholars have highlighted that result in us becoming spiritually content? Now, to set the ground, so as many of you guys know, I've been here for 2 months now. I'd just like to share one experience to just so everyone understands where am I coming from, what has happened in the last 2 months based on the people that I've met, information that that people have shared, which basically became the reason why I decided to talk about this topic. So this experience was in the month of Ramadan at one of the iftar dawats. Right? One uncle, very close friend who's known me for a good 15 years, came up and met me, said, I've met you after 10 years. When are you coming back? Right? We need more scholars on the ground. When are you coming back? So I asked him, assuming that he is going to have a response to it, and I asked him, what is it that you think is not happening in GTA? Right? Everything that you can think of, every sort of activity, every sort of flavor is available in GTA. You have so many platforms, so many programs are happening in all of GTA that I don't think you need another scholar to come do something different. Everything's happening. So if you can think of something that's not happening, let me know, and then I can at least think about coming back. And this uncle, he stopped for a second, for a few minutes, he thought about it, and his response was, yes, you are right. Everything is happening here. There is nothing different. There is nothing more that we need to do. All we need is to find that appropriate flavor for us, plug ourselves in, and get going. So this idea of this sense of satisfaction, the sense that everything that's happening is okay, right? This idea that, what we have right now is good enough, right? This idea that even if I can reach or enter paradise at the lowest of levels, that's okay, that's acceptable. This idea, number one, it can happen to us as individuals. It can actually also happen at a community level, right? Where the entire community, given the state that they are in, is satisfied, right? They are satisfied that, we are on autopilot mode, everything is well, सब ठीक चल रहा है, सब सुकून में, no problem, all is good, कुछ छेड़ने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, सब कुछ बेहतरीन है. This sense of satisfaction, right, is what we are talking about, right? The word that we generally use in Arabic for contentment is qanaat, and I'm sure every one of you guys have heard about this. It's not a new concept in any way. When we go into English language, right, we have 2 or 3 different terminologies. We have this idea of contentment, we have this idea of complacency, and then we also have this third idea of being stagnant. Right? What is the difference between these 3 terminologies? In English language, it's actually pretty clear. Right? So contentment is this, this satisfaction that one has, right? But at the same time, this satisfaction actually becomes a motivating factor for this person to actually continue working hard, right? But complacency means that there is this sense of satisfaction, but this satisfaction, what it does is it reduces the amount of effort that one is putting in, right? Now, when you sort of go deeper into English language, you see that complacency, if you stay complacent for long enough, it will eventually result in being stagnant, where there is absolutely no movement, nothing's happening, as if you are on a standstill, right? We have a similar idea in Islam as well, but when we look at the Arabic language, we don't see multiple words for, let's say, contentment or complacency or stagnation or being stagnant. Contentment, we generally use the word qanaat, right? Again, like I said, it's a very common word. Complacency is qanaat as well, but it's the bad form of qanaat, right? You're not allowed to be complacent in Islam, right? You're not allowed to be satisfied in a way where you don't put effort into anything, right? Where you satisfy yourself in the state that you're in. And then stagnation or being stagnant basically means that being rakid, the word that they use in Arabic is rukud. Okay, there's absolutely no movement that's happening. Now, before we sort of go deeper into this, Islamically, as far as the Islamic teachings are concerned, how do we define qanaat? Because right now, this idea of contentment, this definition of contentment, satisfaction, that motivates you is from English dictionary. You can just Google it and you'll find it. But when we go to Islamic teachings, right, this idea of contentment is very extraordinary. It's not just very simple as saying, okay, I'm razi, I am satisfied, I'm satisfied with what I have. Contentment in Islam, or qanaat in Islam, is a state. It's the state of the nafs. Right? It's a state of the soul of a human being. And this satisfaction, this state of satisfaction, is a result of at least one of these two things. Sometimes you have this state of satisfaction because what you have been given from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any ikhtiyar and free will of your own. There are certain blessings, there are certain things that we are given from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where we had no free will in it. Right? Starting from our own existence as an example, the way our physical features are, there was absolutely no control. As far as our own free will is concerned, there was no free will in these things. These can, in some cases, it can be positive things. In some cases, it can be negative things. For example, someone has some sort of sickness. Someone, has epilepsy or ADHD or I don't know, any other issues that people can have. There's absolutely no ikhtiyar, no free will of our own in these things. This is given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being satisfied with what I have been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where my free will was not involved. This is, qanaat includes this satisfaction as well. So that's one thing. So being in the state of satisfaction because of what? Because of what I have been given from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where my free will was not involved. The second thing which results in this satisfaction is I have been given something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And my free will and my ikhtiyar was actually involved in it, right? It was because of my own free will, or my free will was one of the causes in what I have, right? Now, we generally understand this concept of qanaat when it comes to, it's easier to sort of understand this concept when it comes to one's financial position. Generally, that's how we talk about it. Right? Even within ourselves, within our communities, we say, okay, I am qane and I'm razi with whatever I'm making. I am qane and I'm razi with whatever I have. Right? So, for example, if I have let's say $1,000, if I'm making $1,000, I will say that I'm qane with what I'm making. That's how we generally explain it. I am razi with what I'm making. Right? In Islam, that's not the case. When we talk about qanaat, right, and I'll use an example to explain the concept. And this is what it means in Islam, as far as the concept is concerned. Let's say I've been given $100,000, right? And I have this opportunity to invest this $100,000 in a way where eventually it will increase. This $100,000 will become $110,000 or $120,000. In Islam, the idea is this, that you invest the $100,000, you invest what you have, whatever you get in return, this success that you achieved, right, will push you even more to do bigger investments, to put more effort, right? This is the idea of qanaat in Islam. You invest your potential, and in return of your investment, in return of your efforts, you are going to get something back in return. And what you get in return will actually push you even more to do more. It will push you to put more effort in improving yourself. So if it's financial, then it becomes financial improvement. If it's spiritual, it becomes spiritual improvement. So with this concept in mind, with this idea in mind, right, I'll give you two examples. We have the material example, right? And then we have the spiritual side of things. When we talk about material success, right, we have riwayat that tell us that, qanaat is something that gives honor to mu'mineen, right? We hear from scholars, we have read about this, that, you can make whatever you want, financially speaking, but don't spend too much. Stay within your limits. Right? We have this idea, and we generally use the ideas of qanaat, the ideas of israf to explain these concepts. Right? But when we look at it Islamically, right, what Islam is telling us this, that when you achieve success, right, even materially, when you achieve success, there's a default mechanism that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed inside all of us. And that default mechanism pushes us to actually achieve more success, to achieve more perfection. Right now we're talking about materially. Right? This default mechanism will push us to achieve more success, and the cycle will continue. So I am on step 1, I achieve success, the default mechanism will push me to do more, I'll do more, I'll achieve more success, and the cycle will continue. This default mechanism that Allah has placed in me of achieving perfection, does it have any limit to it? There is no limit to this default state or this default inclination that Allah has put in all of us. We can continue to actually achieve perfection, and we can keep on going and going and going, even materially speaking. Right? So now one can argue here that because this inclination, this default inclination that we have is endless, it can continue, therefore the effort that we are putting into achieving material success is also endless and infinite. Right? So you have this on one side. On the spiritual side, right, when we talk about the principle is the same. On the spiritual side, we say that Allah has created us, it has given us certain potentials, and when we use our potential properly, we achieve success. What is this spiritual success that we achieve? The spiritual success, there are different ways of explaining it, but the spiritual success is basically achieving closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, achieving qurb of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, becoming more like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So when we achieve this success, then again, this default mechanism that Allah has placed in us, the default mechanism of achieving perfection, kicks in. It would push us to achieve more success. It will push us to become more like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It will push us to become even closer to get even closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How long this process can continue? Is there a limit to it? Again, in our spiritual journey, there is no limit to this. We can continue to push ourselves, we can continue to achieve success, we can continue to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with no limit. It can be infinite. So now we have these two ideas. As far as material success is concerned, the way we explained it, it can be endless and it can be infinite. As far as our spiritual journey and spiritual success is concerned, again, it can be endless and it can be infinite. What is the difference? What is the difference between these two? Am I allowed to now endlessly, infinitely continue my material success with no limits, even if it's done with halal means? Because that's what the principle is telling us, right? There's a default mechanism in all of us to achieve perfection. Am I allowed to use this default mechanism to achieve material success infinitely? The same principle applies in our spiritual success. Am I allowed to use this default mechanism to achieve infinite spiritual success or not? Or no, there is a point where I can tell myself, where the Imams are telling us, where the Prophet tells us, okay, no, this is where you have to put a stop. You're not allowed to go beyond this point, materially or spiritually. Right? So this is what we're trying to figure out. This is the idea of spiritual contentment, The idea that we can be spiritually content, this is where it comes. That's where it comes in. So we have to figure out: is there a line that we should not cross, right? Principally speaking, when we talk about material success, internally we know that you cannot endlessly continue. But the principle is telling us something else. The principle tells us, whether you like it or not, you are going to continue, because it's coming from inside. It's a default mechanism. When we look at the riwayat, when we look at the sources, when we look at Quran, when we look at the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, when it comes to material success and when it comes to being content materially, what is the principle? Right? They tell us, the riwayats and the sources tell us, that you can have a lot but take less. This idea and this difference in having and taking. When we look at the prophets, when we look at the imams, they had a lot, but they took less from it. When they had a lot, having a lot gave them a sense of satisfaction. And the internal mechanism kicked in, they put more effort in having a lot. And they continued to have a lot. But when it came time to take from what they had, they took less from it. And they were satisfied with taking less from what they had. With this idea of contentment, with this understanding of contentment, you are going to continue to push yourself. Right now we're talking about materially. You're going to continue to push yourself in having a lot. But when it comes time to take from it for yourself, you're going to take less from it. You're going to take what you need. Now, how do you define less? Because it's very subjective. It's dependent on your zaman and makan and where you live and what the standard of livings are. It's dependent on a lot of other factors, so we don't get into that. But the idea that we get when we look at the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt is they had a lot, but they took less from it. The riwayat, I'll go over a couple of riwayats to just give us a better understanding of what the Ahlul Bayt used to do. There's one riwayat from Imam Ali alayhi salam from Gurar al-Hikam. It says, Al-qana'atu al-iktisaru al-qalil. Qana'at, contentment, is being satisfied with less. It does not mean having less. It means being satisfied with less and taking less. You can have a lot, but you have to take less. Another example. Another riwayat. Azza man qani'a wa zalla man tami'a. Honor is for those who are content, and humiliation is for someone who is greedy. Having a lot doesn't mean that you're greedy. You can have a lot, but taking a lot can result in tama. Taking a lot can result in greed. Taking a lot can be the result of greed. You are taking a lot because of greed. And that's where we have to be careful when it comes to material success. You can have a lot, put all your efforts in, do whatever you can, but when it comes to taking from it, take less from it. Take what you need. Like I said, taking, how much to take, what to take is very subjective, it's dependent on multiple factors, but when it comes to taking, it has to be less. When you go to spiritual side, in our own spiritual journey, do we have a concept where we can say, okay, take less? We said that when we put effort into our spiritual journey, what is the outcome? The outcome is the qurb of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The outcome is achieving closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The outcome is becoming more like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can I now say that I want less of it? I don't want, so much qurb. I don't want, I don't want to become so much like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm okay with where I am. Right? This default principle, this default inclination that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in all of us of achieving perfection, of continuously achieving perfection, if we understand it properly, will this even allow us to say that I'm okay with what I have? This question itself, is being spiritually content, according to Islamic teachings, is this even a right question? Or should the question be that, what is it that we can do to achieve infinite closeness, to achieve infinite, to have infinite outcome as far as the spiritual journey is concerned? When you talk to the ulama akhlaq, when you read the akhlaq books, this concept is highlighted in these books, right? In the teachings, where this idea of spiritual contentment, according to Islamic teachings, is not a right idea, right? You cannot be in any way or form, at any time of our lives, be spiritually content, individually or as a community. Recite a salawat, please. But then there's a problem. The problem is when we ask ourselves this question, am I spiritually content or not? Am I satisfied with where I am? Do I want to become spiritually better? Do I want to put effort into achieving higher levels? Do I want to put effort into getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When we genuinely ask these questions, there are times, and a lot of times, the answer is that no. The answer is I'm okay where I am. And even if the answer is not this, our actions are actually telling us this. When we look at our own actions, we don't see the effort. When we look at our own actions, we don't see that grilling that needs to happen as far as the spiritual journey is concerned. And this is where we enter the second portion, right? What are these factors that actually, unfortunately, make us spiritually content? Where do we, go? Where do we drop the ball? What happens that, we become so content, spiritually content, which results in complacency, and then eventually results in being stagnant? Right? Being stagnant meaning what? Being stagnant, spiritually, there is absolutely no movement, individually or at a community level. Being complacent, one step lower, right, in between content and being stagnant, is there is a level of satisfaction, but the effort is not there. There's not enough effort. Let's put it this way. It's not that there is no effort, there is not enough effort. Right? So what are some of these factors that contribute in us becoming spiritually content, which will result in complacency and then eventually being stagnant? There are 5 or 6 main factors that scholars have highlighted. I'll list them first and then we can go over some of them one by one. The first factor is being ignorant of our own potential. The potential that Allah has given to human beings, to insan. Being ignorant of that potential. What is the potential that Allah has given all of us? So that's one of the factors. Another factor, number 2, is being asir in the sense being enchained, being enslaved by certain things. What are those certain things? Inshallah, we'll go over a few. Number 3 is fear itself, which can sometimes also result in being hopeless. And how does that work? How does that play a role? Number 4, arrogance. Number 5, being ghafil, heedlessness. We know we have potential. We know what we need to do. We just don't remember. We've forgotten about it. And another one, which I didn't read this in a book, but I experienced it in a discussion with someone, is being stubborn. Ziddi, zid mein nahi karna. So give me a lot of salawat, and inshallah we'll go some of these factors one by one. Salawat ala Muhammad. So the first factor we said is being ignorant towards our potential. When we look at the seerah of the prophets, when we look at the seerah of the imams, when we study history, one of the first things that the prophets used to do when they used to announce their prophethood, before they even actually announced the concept of Tawheed, right? One of the things that they used to do is they used to make people realize what their potential was. That they are human beings, they are insan, they are not like every other being that's around them. Insan is not like a stone. Insan is not like other beings that are around them. Right? Now, when we look at Quran, when we look at the ayat of the Quran, there are many verses that highlight this fact. And one of the verses that highlight this fact is the one that I recited. The verse is what? The verse from Surah Baqarah, verse number 30. The verse says, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the malaika, the angels, that I am appointing on earth or on zameen a janashin, a khalifa of mine. Just this verse by itself, as human beings, as insan, the potential is what? The potential is to become the guardians, become the janashin of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth, let's say, in this world. Right? Another verse, Surah Sad, verse number 72. Again, a very famous word. فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, my ruh. Right? So the story is what? The story is that when Allah made let's say Hazrat Adam, and blown is not the right word, but we'll use it for now. He blew his ruh in Hazrat Adam. Right? His ruh. You know what? In my potential, whatever capabilities and potential that I have, is coming from where? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because my reality is my ruh. Yes, my body, my physical existence has a role in it. But what actually made me insan is my ruh. And that's coming from where? From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the potential is coming from where? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The limit of that potential is what? Infinite, pretty much. Right? Except one limitation, which is we cannot become Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can become like Him, but not Him. Another verse, Surah Isra, verse number 70. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. Just this portion. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have honored Bani Adam. This honor, where is this honor coming from? Why are insan and human beings and Bani Adam, why are they honored? Why is this glass not honored? Yes, this glass exists. The existence is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? But this glass the existence of this glass was not such that Allah reveals a verse in Quran where He says وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا مَثْلًا, this glass. The verse says وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam. This honor that we have from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights what? A level of potential that we have that's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that no one else has. The angels don't have it, the jinns don't have it, no other existence has this potential. And of course a lot of other verses. Some riwayat, just to sort of, prove the point. This riwayat is from Imam Ali alayhi salam. It's in Biharul Anwar. The riwayat says this: Ma khuliqtum lil fana'i bal khuliqtum lil baqa. You have not been created for fana. You have been created for baqa. You are always going to remain. Right? Another verse, another riwayat, again from Imam Ali alayhi salam. This one is also in Biharul Anwar. It says, أُثَامِنُ بِالنَّفْسِ النَّفْسِيَّةِ رَبَّهَا. Your value, right? Your arzish, or your value, the value of your nafs is your Rabb. To give a very basic translation, the value of your nafs is your Rabb. You know what? Where is this value coming from? Right? Again, it's highlighting a level of potential that no other existence has. Now, the interesting thing is, with all this potential that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, He has placed us at the lowest of levels. Right? We have this verse in Surah Teen, verse number 5. Very famous verse. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. Okay, we have put man at the lowest of levels. We have given him all the potential that that Allah could give us, and He has placed us at the lowest of levels. And then He has called us towards Him. He said, "Come towards me." Right? He has given us the potential, He has placed us at the lowest of levels, and then He is asking us to come towards Him. What are some of the blessings? Just to sort of it's easy to say, okay, potential, but let's say what is some of this potential that He has given us? And there are many things that you can highlight, but I would say top 3. Right? Top 3. Number 1 is the actual wahi, Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. This is something that Allah has given us. It's part of our potential. We deserved it. Deserved in the sense that we needed it. Without this, we will not be able to move. Without this, we are not able to move from asfala safilin to higher levels. Having this is a blessing. Number 2, our intellect. In Nahj al-Balagha, when Imam Ali alayhi salam, in one of the sermons, he's talking about the purpose why Allah sent the prophets. Right? The statement that he uses is this: وَيُثِيرُ لَهُمْ دَفَائِنُ الْأُقُولِ. To pretty much the intellect which was buried, to basically bring it out. Right? This intellect is another blessing. It's part of our potential. The work that intellect does, no other existence, no other being can do it. Number 3, the ability to do intakhab, this free will that we have, the ability to choose. Right? And again, a lot of other things, but I would say top 3 would be these 3 things. So, to sort of summarize, the first factor that contributes in us becoming spiritually content and then complacent and then being stagnant is ignorance towards our potential. Number 2, the second factor is being chained or enslaving ourselves. What do we mean? We know what our potential is. It's as if we know we have the wings to fly, but our feet are chained. We are flapping the wings, but we are not flying. Why? Because the feet are chained. What has chained us? What are these chains? One of them is our own nafs. We have the verse in the Holy Quran, Surah Jasiyah, verse number 23. The verse says this: أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاءٌ. Have you not seen the one who has taken his own hawa nafs, his own desires, as their ilah? Our nafs, our own hawa nafs, our own desires chain us. They don't let us fly. Number 2, another thing that basically chains us is what we see our elders do. Something that's been going on for generations and generations, we just continue to do it. We have the verse in Surah Anbiya, verse number 53. The verse says this, قَالُوا وَجَدْنَا آبَاءَنَا لَهَا عَابِدِينَ. They said, we found our fathers do ibadat of the stones, basically the mushrikeen. The Prophet used to ask them, why do you worship the stones? They used to say that because our fathers used to do it. This thing that's been going on for generations and generations, thing that's been, that our fathers are doing, we continue to do without questioning anything. It becomes a chain. Number 3, the third factor, fear and hopelessness. When we look at where we are placed, asfala safilin, and when we look at where we have to go, which is inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun, go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This distance that we see, right, and all the obstacles that come in it, all the enemies that we have, creates fear and then eventually results in hopelessness. कि यार नहीं हो सकता, कौन करेगा, मुश्किल है, डर लग रहा है, छोड़ दो. This attitude. Again, it would eventually become, the result would be what? The result would be, I'm good with what I have, I don't need to do anything else. There's a verse in Surah Araf, verse number 16. Again, this is an example of the enemies that we have on this path. This is where the shaitan says, قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. I am going to stand on the Sirat al-Mustaqim and I'm going to misguide everyone who comes on this path. So we are on Asfala Safilin, we have to go to Inna Lillahi wa Inna Ilayhi Rajiun, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the dushman is, the enemy is saying that I'm going to stand on this path and I'm going to misguide you guys. This idea brings fear, brings hopelessness. What can I do? What can we do to sort of get rid of this fear? Go back and look at the blessings that we have. The Wahi, the Ahlul Bayt, the Prophets, the Quran, and a lot of other things. Factor number 4, which is pretty much, I would say, the most important factor, is arrogance. Recite a salawat, please. Now, arrogance is pretty interesting, because arrogance is very dangerous as well, because on one side, we are talking about realizing and knowing what our potential is. On the other side, knowing what the potential is can actually result in arrogance. Right? I can become arrogant and I can say, okay, this is what my potential is. And if it results in arrogance, then in the end, practically speaking, there is no effort. Sometimes this arrogance comes when we see results. So let's say I've realized what my potential is. I have unchained myself. I don't have the fear and I'm not hopeless anymore. Right? I put effort in and I see results. Result in the sense, in our spiritual journey, the result is what? Qurb of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, achieving closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I see results, and this makes me arrogant. The best example is what? Shaitan himself. Did everything that he could, did all the worship, in the end became arrogant. Hoping that what I have done so far, all the worship that I have done so far, is going to be sufficient. So arrogance, again, is one of the most important factors that can result in contentment and then again complacency and being stagnant. Number 5, heedlessness and ghaflat. This is again very common with us. I know the potential, I'm not arrogant, everything is good, I just don't remember. It's very common. I got busy with my life, work, studies, whatever that I'm involved in. I just don't remember anymore. Very, very common. Right? What's the solution here? What can we do What can I do to come out of this forgetfulness, to come out of this heedlessness? Yeah, the verse in the Arabic word that's used is tawasi, giving reminders. We have the verse in Surah Asr, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Giving reminders of haqq and sabr. Haqq and sabr, yes, has its place, but here in our own discussion is giving reminders of what? Of our own potential. Giving reminders of what? Don't enslave yourselves. Giving reminders of what? Don't be afraid. Don't become hopeless. Right? Having sessions like these, doing smaller study circles, spending time with your Muslim brothers and sisters, all of these things, they help us in giving reminders. Don't forget what your potential is. Don't forget why you were sent here. Right? And the last one, which of course was just based off from experience, is being stubborn. This last one, I haven't written it here because this experience happened 2 hours ago. Right? So it was based on a discussion with someone. And in that discussion, I realized, okay, being stubborn is also a factor why we can become complacent and then become stagnant. Bas nahi karna hai. I know what my potential is. I know what the Ahlul Bayt said. I know what the Quran is saying. I know all of this. Bas nahi karna hai. I don't want to do it. I'm okay with where I am. And this is also very scary because now I realize that what I have to do, but just because I'm stubborn, I'm not doing it. Right? So to sort of, summarize, we talked about 4 or 5 things, right? We talked about the idea of being content in Islam. What does it mean? It means that you are in a state of satisfaction. This state of satisfaction is a result of what? It's either a result of what you have been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without your free will involved, or it's either the state of satisfaction is a result of what you have been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your free will involved, with your ikhtiyar involved. That's how we defined qanaat and contentment in Islam. We talked about the difference between being materially content and being spiritually content. We said in being materially content, you can have a lot, but don't take a lot. Have a lot, do whatever that you need to do to have a lot. But when it comes time to take from it, don't take a lot. Take what you need. And we said that the default principles that Allah has put in place basically means that the cycle can infinitely continue. But then we have riwayat and we have ayat that put a limit to our material, it puts a limit to what we can materially take, what we can take from what we have. We also talked about spiritual contentment, right? There is no limit to spiritual contentment. We can continue to move forward infinitely. We talked about 5 or 6 factors that result in being content, and then again being complacent, and then being stagnant. With this, I would like to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the tawfiq to continue to have such sessions which work as reminders, where we come out of this heedlessness and we come out of this ghaflat, this state of ghaflat that we are in, and we can work together as individuals and as a group and as a community, where we can move closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, achieve this qurb, become more like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where we can come out of this state of complacency and this state of being stagnant, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Thank you, Sheikh Mujahid, for that very insightful talk. The next portion will just be a brief guided question and answer portion, like a brief discussion, essentially. And then at the end, if there are any other outstanding questions, we can inshallah take those. So are we okay with starting, Sheikh Mujahid? So I'll be honest, I'm going to start off with a very, it's a question that's on the minds of a lot of people, and you kind of hinted at this by talking about you hinted at this by breaking it down into like a material lens and a spiritual lens. So focusing on the material lens, the question to you is, does money buy happiness? Because you talked a lot about, even if you have a lot, but by taking less, that should be kind of like our go-to type of thing, right? So it seems like you're saying that money doesn't buy happiness. So what do you have to say about that?
Does money buy happiness? Money gives you happiness. Can it buy happiness or not? It's two different ideas. It depends how you look at it. If you're strictly looking at it from a material lens without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in picture, it gives you happiness, right? Because we will be lying to ourselves if I say that if I have a lot of money and I'm not happy. We are lying to ourselves. If anyone is saying this, it's not true. Okay? So now let's accept that yes, it gives happiness. But what's important is to know where it's coming from, the source of it. It's okay to be happy. Right? We are not robots. We are human beings. We are made like this. But what's important is to know where it's coming from. What's important is to know what the source is. What's important is to know how to spend it. What's important is to know what the source is telling us, how to spend it. Right? This idea of taking less, having more but taking less. Why is this idea, where is this coming from? It's coming from the source. So let's say if I have 10, I take 5 because I need 5. This extra 5 that I have, the other people have a right on it. Right? It's in my hand. Allah has given it to me to send it to basically channelize it to appropriate people. Right? So yes, it can buy happiness or it will give you happiness. Right? But if you take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala outside, if you don't bring him in the picture, then number one, that happiness is very limited, and the idea that you can easily go away from the path is of course there. But what's important for us as Muslims, because we're talking about this idea within the boundary of Islam, right, is to know the source of it. Right? So, hope that answers.
And the source kind of always goes back to like Allah, right? Like money just like it comes through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, through our hard work. But
so again, to say that this again would be taqriban in one way sort of we're going to be lying to ourselves when we say that my effort has no role in it. Right? It's very easy to say that it goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you also have to acknowledge that Allah has given you a potential and He has given you the capability where you were able to put effort into getting what you have. Right? But then don't see yourself independent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to see yourself as part of the chain of causes. You're not alone, you're not by yourself. Right? You have a role in it because Allah has given you that role. You would not have that role if Allah was not in the picture. Right? So you have to look at the entire spectrum with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on top. But don't discount yourself either. Don't say, okay, main kuch bhi nahi hu, or I have no role, I have absolutely nothing and I didn't do anything. No, acknowledge that you did something, but don't consider yourself independent. Go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, say, okay, this effort, this strength, the capability came from Him. Alhamdulillah, He gave me the tawfiq to do whatever I could. Right? So go back and connect with Him.
That makes sense. Thank you. My next question is kind of like tied in with that. It's still about material success. So you mentioned that even if you have a lot, take less, right? And that was manifested through the 14 Masumin throughout their lives. But what does that kind of really mean? So the context that I'm coming from is, for example, say a person's in 1 year he's making less and the next year he's making more. So what happens in most cases is people's standard of life changes, right? They buy a bigger house, they buy a nicer car.
Yeah.
So according to that, as you do have a lot, you are kind of taking more for yourself as well, right? Because you're improving standard of life. So what do you really mean by, you have a lot, but you take less?
So that's why I said it's very subjective. Right? The idea in Islam, the entire religion of Islam, when you're studying different concepts, including the concept of qanaat, there is one primary idea that Islam always highlights, and this idea of tarbiyat. right? And when you talk about tarbiyat becomes very personal. It's a case-by-case issue. For someone like yourself, given your circumstances, maybe taking more every year might make sense, right? Because it's important for your own tarbiyat. For someone like person B, it actually might not make sense. So that's why I said it's very subjective. Yeah, you get general guidelines based on the standard of living of where you're living and the people that you're interacting with, so on and so forth. But at the same time, it's very important to realize that these concepts, these ideas that Islam has introduced, are based in the tarbiyat of a human being, right? If taking less, let's give an example. I have a lot, I take less to show off. I am taking less to show off. Now this
to show off that
to others,
like a humble guy.
more like a humble guy. Yeah. Now this taking less, this showing off of humility and humbleness is actually detriment to my own tarbiyat.
Yeah.
So now if you have a proper teacher who is guiding you, a proper scholar who is guiding you, you present them this case, the scholar might say, actually don't take less, take more. Why? Because end of the day, the goal is what? The goal is to do tarbiyat, right? So it becomes very subjective. It becomes a case-by-case issue. So it's very difficult to sort of give a very general or kulli answer where, okay, do this or do that.
Okay, no, understood. But I guess we do appreciate that kind of like more insights about that, right? My next question is, so you mentioned 5 to 6 main factors that lead to stagnation. So first, for example, was being ignorant of our own potential. Second, being an asir, enslaved by certain things, which you mentioned. 3 was fear itself, which can result in being hopeless. 4th was arrogance. 5th was being ghafil, heedless.
Yeah.
And the last was being stubborn, right? So from those 5 to 6 factors, which one do you think are the most prevalent from like your interactions so far with like the youth in general or uncles and aunties, but in general, like which factors do you think are the most prevalent and which factors are the most dangerous if you were to kind of rank them?
I'd say the factors which were, again, this is just based on my own experience of the last, let's say, 2 months or so, at least in Canada. Of course, because these discussions are very general, right? So these are very, because they're general, they apply in other areas as well. So it's not limited to, let's say, Toronto or GT or Canada in any way. But I would say if I had to rank them, I would say number 1 would be ignorance of our own potential. I don't think that we realize what our potential is. I'm including myself in this. It's very easy to sort of say that we are just like every other being that's around us, when that is not the case, right? We are very different from everything else that's around us. So I would say that's number 1. Number 2, which is very common in our own, let's say, communities, is the arrogance. I think arrogance is extreme. Number 1, we all know it's very dangerous, but I think it's very common as well, and we don't realize it. It comes out when we are talking to someone, other people see it, right? But because we are not seeing, because you have to look at yourself from outside to realize that you are being arrogant, right? What really helps in sort of figuring it out is having a good friend. We have this riwayat from the Imam that says a good friend is like a mirror, right? So having a good friend really helps in sort of showing you that side of yours which you cannot see yourself. I would say arrogance is number 2. Number 3 is being stubborn. Being stubborn is also, I would say, if I had to list top 3, I would say these 3. Yeah.
That's it for my questions. If there are any, I guess, questions from the audience, we can take those. If not, we can inshallah wrap it up because we are almost at the hour mark. Any general questions from the audience? Ali?
Just a quick question. You know the first riwayat that you narrated from Mujahid Islam, qanaat is when, satisfaction with little.
Yeah.
What was the Arabic for that again?
Al-qanaatu al-iqtisaru ala al-qalil. I'll send it to you.
Any other questions? If not, the Sheikh will inshallah be here as well after this, so we can inshallah approach him one-on-one. But thank you again, Sheikh, for all the insights and for all the wisdom there. And inshallah, and thank you all for coming out tonight. We will be staying around for a bit. I think the brothers want to play some ping pong and stuff. But there will be tea and refreshments served at the back. So with that being said, I think the girls can inshallah head back down into the other hall, and brothers will have this hall. So sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa